And there are so many things I want to say to you, but I thought I would talk a little bit about your household life and the wonderful things opening to you now regarding this life. Because the downpouring of the spiritual powers are so intense at this time to move away the debris of the astral which has been coming in from the lower regions of the Darshan levels and which have deluded men into so many distortions of their true natures. This is the thing I especially wish to speak on tonight, is some fragment things I've been thinking of on the household life. But first I want to talk about a little incident that came to my attention on the way. Yesterday morning I was leaving, and I just turned on the TV for a moment, and it was said on the TV that the Hog's Breath restaurant, all of you who've been in Carmel have seen this sign hanging out with a hog's head. And it's a very hideous name, but that's the name. It belongs to Clint Eastwood, the movie star. And he serves mostly vegetarian things. You can get all sorts of lovely soups and things he believes in. He believes in the natural foods. Well, anyway, it seems that this happened, that on that particular morning, just before John and myself started out, the TV said that the man who was opening up that morning, the restaurant, came up, and the first thing he noticed that the sign from the Hog's Head was missing. And as he did notice it, there was a van that pulled away. At the same time, a police car came up, and they told him that the Hog's Head was missing, and they went after the van and caught him and got the Hog's Head. So that to me was a perfect example of three coinciding points of, if one has grace, that these functions come together like this. In other words, that was a coinciding principle functioning in three aspects: the police car right on time, the thief on time to be caught, and the sign on time to be picked up. So these, while it is a commonplace, it still illustrates that this law is working, and that it is working if there's a certain kind of grace. And that grace is working at all times if we understand it and set it into motion by faith and trust, but also by stewardship to protect our property. And having good stewards in your service also. This must have been a good steward, or he would not have noticed this, and so forth. And the police on time for once. That was also a coinciding principle. So it is first when we enter the inner sphere and move out of the outer circle of the inner life that we are aware of the coinciding principle of timing, and of how, when we are working with timing, within the law of timing, the first thing we do, of course, is to correct our habits, which sets us into timing. And as I was talking to you on Saturday night in the Darshan healing, I was telling you about the cycles, and one thing I learned about cyclic law is that cycles inevitably go to their conclusion. They simply fulfill themselves. If you set up a cycle, it is inevitable that it's going to conclude. And if it does not conclude in its full dimension, it concludes in certain degrees of that and maybe many aspects of that. In other words, if you set up emotion of love, it is going to be a cycle of love which gives blessings and returns to you with love in many different aspects and ways you do not expect. And hate, it is also the same thing. So everything we do, for instance, our practices. Now, of course, you know that Niscience, from the very beginning of the white paper, is a marking and tracing system, in where you relate yourself to the inner sphere of your nature, and also comes equal in ethic to outside life or physical life. The marking and tracing. Every exercise, every mantra, every mantram, every dream experience, and every post-meditative experience, and every assignment on the altar, every worship, part of the worship body, all of that is a part of marking and tracing experience, whereby we are opening the spiritual life. Now, to me, I feel we're going into a very wholesome and very vital aspect of our life, the household life, and its spiritual nature, and the relationship to the altar in the home, and the relationship to our continuing sacrament, which we are taking every morning, in which we have simply marvelous testimonies, and also our realizations have made a leap since taking the continuing sacrament. And it has such a tremendous regulating aspect on timing system of our inner natures and outer natures. And it also has a tremendous impact on the conscience, and has that provision that gives that lovely oneness between fellow disciples, and the wonderful love and unison, and the holy anxiety to be together. And also it opens the telepathic aspects between us all, and provides us with, while not always knowing exactly what our fellow disciple is going through, but having a holy concern for a particular fellow disciple and holding them in the light when it comes before us more than once. In other words, in our mind and consciousness. We're just not thinking about that person. It's part of our thought body. In other words, when you are thinking of a fellow disciple, it is a part of the thought body of the Niscience body. And this is, of course, a part of the spiritual atmosphere and our continued marking and tracing work. I'm doing quite a lot about foods now in this inner marking and tracing for you. And today I was tracing horseradish. Not because I gave it to you in the in the little thing I gave you the other night, but it came to me about it, and it came to me in the way out of the telepathic source from a fellow disciple who had been eating it quite a bit all day. But what I discovered was that horseradish has a very special effect upon the pituitary gland and the thyroid gland, and also especially when eaten with fish in the lower seed earth or sediments. Such fish are flounders and salmon, yes, and horseradish gives a certain balance to the iodine in the seafood, which in some way affects the body in a special energization of the glandular system, especially the glandular system. But it is through, and horseradish affects the nervous system through the thyroid. And that, of course, the nervous system directly is affected with the senses, with your five senses, and feeds the lower survival mind. And so it is something given to me now, beloved ones, I'm receiving from the spiritual worlds directly from the source of knowledge regarding foods and nutrition for our new age and for this new era, because this is the only way men will be able to balance the frenzied energies they're receiving from the outside world and all of these extra things put upon us by artificial and synthetic things. The only way we're going to master this is the understanding of food and the understanding of the importance of combination of foods and their aspect upon our natures and what they do to our physical bodies. And especially in the family atom, or that is the household of life, we are to have a very wonderful progress in nutrition and the selective palate. Now remember, out here is the cosmic stuff, and that is really equal to the blood in your body. In other words, it's a form of energy, but it's not blood in the sense that it is blood that we know in our own blood, but it is the blood of the universe, the cosmic stuff. Now, when we breathe that in turn becomes color, because with breath is always accompanying color, and that color is especially in the hollow of the mouth. Now, the psychic energies, as you know, especially affect you in the sinus region. They're very upset, frenzied psychic energy affect you here. And but that which is healing is in the palate, which presses against this. And when your breath brings the color out of the cosmic stuff, when you breathe in and you're breathing with spiritual, pure thoughts, and you're bringing it into the palate, the rounded cathedral-like of the mouth, you're feeling these holy vibrations all in the mouth, then you're having color. And then when you are seeing a specific color, you should always hold it before you and step through it. And then just let the meditation take you. In other words, that color then is coming from the most high energy of spiritual nature. And it is, then you are going through that barrier. Now, the Maya world, as you know, is built, the network of the Maya system is in squares, like crossings. I have drawn it in my book, Kundalini West. Now, every one of these squares has like a cross, one crossing point. And right in that point of the center where the vertical and the horizontal crosses is a point of energy that you must trans-energize so that you can open the network and loosen the Maya and step into that world. Now, the Maya world in that network just swings you back and forth in the cause and effect action. But when you step over into timelessness, you go through, now when you go through the color, it's like going through a mirror, and that mirror is the illusion of the astral. But when you go through color, you step out of the dimensions of the astral into the pure, clear light, and you come into your own realization. And you then enter into the informing principle where you bring the knowledge from the spiritual worlds. So remember that everything you experience in the 3 lower planes of the astral is called lower Devachan. And some persons live, there are 3 aspects of the lower Devachan, and that is, the lowest is the grotesque, which you have described in the astral as the same, but it's a Devachan because it is called a Devachan inwardly because that is where the different degrees of devas function. They are kinds of angels, which the Bible calls the shining spirits. Then the grotesque, and in the fantasy and in the wish level, the devas there are dual as we are. Yes, no, analysis. And they have the power to work very much on the over-analysis and critical mind. In other words, they set up forces which you draw upon from them if you step into these lower Devachan planes and you're at home in them. Now, it is said in the Hindu teaching that if you go into certain Devachan level, that you, after death, that you become so happy because it's so beautiful, and everyone looks as if they are perfected, and there are angels everywhere and perfectly beautiful. And this is described in much of the Hindu literature. You think that is the last place. And you get so fascinated with it that you cannot reincarnate. So you stay in what they call heaven, and that is what the Orthodox traditional Christian calls heaven. And the wish level of the Devachan level is very beautiful. Now, there are certain people with psychic powers in the world now, living in the world, who have not spiritualized these powers, who live and function mentally through these lower Devachan regions. And some are on the fantasy level, in which they always have a big scheme how to get rich, or they're always going to get the richest husband or have the biggest automobile. Now, all of this is the fantasy level. And this is where obsession comes from, and fetishes come from, is on this Devachan level of fantasy. When you say you're a fantasized person, we mean that you are connected with the Devachan plane, the second plane of the Devachan, and you are in illusion that you are that, or you are going to get that, or that it is your right to have that beyond others and over others. Then when you get into the wish level, you're always making plans that you're going to do and you never do it. That's where your procrastination comes from. It's on this suction, psychic suction from that third Devachan plane. And you're always planning something that's going to happen, but it never happens because you don't put it into actuality in the fourth Devachan plane, where your hierarchy nature manifests in actual form and actual apparitional touching and sensing all that you hold in the light through visualization. Because on the fourth Devachan plane, there are the Akashic records of the world, the Akashic records of you personally, and there is great music, the great compositions, and here are the true shining devas. They are the shining spirits who are in this fourth region, or that is the Devachan plane. So when you're reading anything about astral world, you are reading about Devachan. And you are reading about, when you're reading about time scales related to Devachan, which are pure, you are relating to the fourth plane of Devachan, and it is called Deva Loka, Deva place. And that is the place of the shining spirit. So this is where you begin to get the true informing principle, the true codes for dreams, and this is where you also, when you go through the mirror, or you go through the color, and it is your breath that brings the color, remember. And the exercise I gave you the other night, Saturday night, in which you were watching the baby breath, the primordial, and then it opens the lens here in the eyebrows, and that is not between the eyebrows, but that's the center, which is a great indestructible atom. When this lens awakens, you will see the color. And when you see the color, simply visualize yourself moving through it. Then you have moved beyond the mirror of the lower Devachan world, and you're in the reality, beginning to have knowledge in the first heaven of the realities of the Bodhisattva work, or the Bodhisattvas or great saints, and you begin to then touch the celestial angels, the cherubim angels, and higher angels, and so forth. Now, many of us go over the Devachan in dreams and night and not aware of it, but many of us, if there's a special thing we have to learn, a special thing we have to recapitulate in knowing, or a special fault we have to have revealed to us, we get caught into the lower Devachan. And there we have certain ritualistic dramas to go through, in which we must learn what is happening. So in dream life, we have the three phases that we must, through using a mantra or a mantram before sleep, we avoid the three lower Devachan levels. But do not forget that at the present time in the world, there's a great stirring of psychic forces. And these psychic forces are seeking to be trans-energized into spiritual. And it is a work of the Christ, of the light, to trans-energize these psychic energies and to bring them into illumination, so that we might have, by the higher initiation dramas, we might go from level to level, or plane to plane, or different aspects of spiritual illumination. And in doing this, of course, when you are working with the lower Devachan, you have only the three chakras, lower chakras open. You have the first chakra in the spine, and then you have the next one, pelvic center, and you have the next one in the abdomen. And these three chakras are the open chakras that draw and suck you into lower Devachan. But once you overcome hate, envy, and greed, or separateness, any of these things, once you overcome this opens up and becomes pure. And then the heart automatically opens. In Niscience, as you know, we start always at the heart chakra. In that way, we have centering, and the other chakras automatically open. They open without harm. And they enable you to use both the love aspect, both the yin and yang part of your natures. So those are some things I'm going to put on in paper in my book. But I want to familiarize you with them now so that you will understand. When we are a symbol here this autumn, and Patrick Madden and various ones Several are coming from the east coast of the United States to be with us. And I'm going to have dream symposiums several weeks in order. And we are going to do some specific research in dreams. So it is important now, during these months, for you to keep your dream diary available at night, so that the dreams you're undergoing now, and especially since you have taken Continuum Sacrament, you will find they will be different than the dreams you have had before. And you'll find that every time you master a spiritual practice, your dreams become different. You do not enter into those entangled, fuzzy dreams that leave you very tired all day. But you go into the lucid knowledge of knowing what is happening in the dream and bringing out its reality and making it the reality of your cognizant and outer consciousness. In other words, there should be no separation with any world of consciousness. Every world of consciousness should be open. And this is what Christ consciousness means. We should understand the Darshan worlds. We should understand these grotesque things which are described in the Bardo and the Tibetan teachings. The Bardo is described as seeing these horrible and hideous figures. But those figures are really your nature. They're not you. The devas are mirrors of your nature. They are dual devas, male, female. They are Shakti and Shiva. And they have the power to reflect to you. If you are greed, they are going to show you with a mouth with food just coming out and just ugly teeth and voluptuous lips. And you are seeing, you think you are having a hallucination in after death. But what you are seeing is the mirror of yourself. But these ugly distortions in dreams are mirrors of your own nature. And that is the devas who give you this. These are the dual devas who give you these distorted dreams. So we must realize that the plain things which have been the morality for so long in Western culture, honesty, character, virtue, and every form which give us a contact with the Ten Commandments, which are followed by the great ones, by Jesus, every one of these are really just a part of our own daily nature, in which these three planes reflected. So to be caught into the wish level is to constantly say you're going to be saying your prayers, but you never say them. You're going to practice your meditation, you never say it. You're always late, you're never on time. All of these things come out of this third Darshan level. And the rebellious level, of course, comes from the Rajasic and the fantasy level, because do not forget that what we call tamas and what we call rajasic and what we call sattvic exist in every particle of our forming nature. We have the tamas cell, in which we inherit from our ancestors. If we're trying to be vegetarians, it comes as a craving for animal food. That is the tamas cell you've inherited from your ancestors. And then you have the rajasic, in when you perhaps want everything sweet in the pleasure principle, and you are eating the wrong things and imbalancing everything. Then you have the wish level, in which you have an obese body because you're always thinking of food rather than God, and you get a great big body. It is not what you eat that makes you fat, it's what you think you want to eat that makes you fat. That is the truth. And an obese body is nothing in the world but a desire that's so big that you don't have a body big enough to carry it, so the body accommodates and becomes that. But every obese person is suffering from astral sensuality, not etheric, but astral sensuality, which is emotional sensuality, and which is not living out your emotion through some form of energy which is creative. That is the sickness of obesity, is to cure and heal desire. and to have right desire. Right willing is very difficult for a person caught into astral nature. He doesn't know that when you say be in the will of God, he doesn't know the first thing you're talking about. He said, give my will up, I wouldn't do it for anything in the world. That's the best thing I have. That's the common way of the materialistic mind. But the person who is sick of being fat, and in every incarnation you may have one of these bodies, because you have to experience all sorts of natures, all sorts of races, and everything to get the whole homogenized state of life itself and life force in this earth. We have to experience it all. And what you hate is what you're going to be. Hate is just as creative, and sometimes more, depending on karma, as love. So when we set up a hate cycle, it's going to come back and you're going to be exactly what you hate. If you hate fat, you're going to get fat. But if you see what fat is, that it is desire unused or non-utilized desire, non-utilized. And with it is generally a desire for power, because that such persons look upon having a lot of food as a lot of power. In other words, they subconsciously think the more they take from the mother's breast, the more they're going to be loved by the mother, and more the mother loves them. And that it all can begin at the mother's breast. And then again, it can be, for instance, now today I was again listening to a news program for a moment of relaxation, and I heard that every day 12,000 people die of starvation. Every single day in the world. Now, they die desiring food. But there's an apathy that comes on a person, because I know I once went 3 months without any water. Believe it, it is the truth. And food. When I was 15 years old, I had typhoid fever, and they would not give me a drop of water or a morsel of food. For 3 months, I lived on God entirely, with nothing. I lost all desire to eat. Didn't care whether I did or not. And that, of course, was preparing me for the work I'm doing today, that sickness. That prepared my body, my desire body. So I would have discernment and discrimination about what I put in my body. I know exactly what my body needs to eat. And thank goodness I can cook it. Well, beloved ones, that is enough for the householder life. And remember that everything we are doing in Niscience is marking and tracing, research, and meditation and worship. And every form of practice is the building of this body, not just a group body, but building in this continuous network which never ceases, regardless of where truth is. If it is truth, if you are desiring truth, you are a part of that network. And wherever it is presented, you are a part of that truth. And regardless of what path you have chosen for now, or your soul has chosen for you now, that path is going to take you to that ultimate truth. And the fellowship one has together, as we have the bhakti body and Niscience, the love body and Niscience, it is a body that's pressing you always towards truth. And the more courage you have to face your nature, which is the undersoul nature, and the more courage you have to even see it stirred up until you are miserable and go through those miserable times knowing it is good for you. Now, I have seen that there are 3 things that are especially going to be understood by the medical world now, which is very important. Breath, the spleen, and the thymus gland. The thymus gland, through special providence and certain forms of spiritual practices, furnishes an antigen in the body, whereby one can come into an immunity which makes him not communicable to the most desperate disease. We're reaching and coming towards this knowledge scientifically, but spiritual scientists know this already. The thymus gland is directly here. And according to observation and science to now, almost everyone atrophies this gland when they are in the puberty or just in post-puberty. That gland becomes atrophied. But there is a function of that gland which is waiting to take hold of the chemistry and energy processes of our body. What you must realize, beloved ones, when you step out of this body in what is called death, you have a framework of energy which is geometrically designed and which is held together, the way your bones are held together, with atoms, with mighty vortices, and with fields, energy fields, which are this is the body you live in after death. And it is a body which is dimensionally capable of encountering vibrations and various aspects of life far beyond anything you know while in a physical body. But do not forget this, that we are not yet fully made, that it is in our hands to be makers of our body and of our nature. It's in our own hands to be makers, creators. And by understanding of nutrition, by understanding of the various process of energy and understanding what the glands are and the nervous system is, and the Kundalini action in all of this, this is a way in which we evolve and we become, and in every life we add to something of more perfection. So it is pitiful when we debase our lives and come in dwarfed to not fitted to do our work because we have dwarfed our minds. Because there is not a particle in our body which is not mind energy. Not a single particle. But it is a degree of mind. Now, God on physical plane is density energy. But that energy is ours to trans-energize into spirituality. And he has given us 5 senses for working with that Maya world, which we brought from other eternity systems. 5 senses. We brought them with us. Those senses are old. They know how to work with you in building the reflexes of your body, these senses. They know how to cooperate with you to sensitize your glandular system in every life. Your glandular system is more sensitized. And your senses then are no longer just dependent upon the intellect as its expression, but they become intelligible instruments, which in turn become spiritualized intellect. Because we are seeking to have spiritualized intellect. And this means stepping over the critical mind. And every time you set up cycles which correlate to the Darshan, thinking and feeling and acting, you are limiting yourself. Now, the way that we are taught by all the great masters to not repress our nature. Because they know that if you repress any form of energy, it comes out in another place. It's like repressing smallpox, and it comes out as leprosy or something, another disease. But it comes out. That energy has to be used. Any energy you repress must somehow express itself. So when you are working to stop your critical mind, the only way that you can stop this is by placing in the mind something spiritual. In that way, you put a straitjacket on your critical mind and you tighten it, and all of the energy inside becomes just an essence. And no longer is that which has the contesting principle within it. Because the critical mind is nothing in the world but a cry against what one thinks is an injustice, and what he's trying to cut somebody down to his size, he's really trying to get somebody to cut him down to the size he thinks he is. So it is really what we are thinking now in Niscience through the hierarchy nature healing. We are bringing this new wonderful method of healing, which accompanies also our holding in the light. These are companions of healing, and using the continuum sacrament, you are becoming standing Niscience, and you have proven, and I've proven it, that, that the group body at itself is a nucleus of that which is definitely functioning in its own right. Now, as I told you before, in the atom, you have first the electron, and you have the proton, and then you next have the neutron. Now, the electron is the yang in the atom, and the proton and the neutron is the yin. And the yin, in its expansion nature, expands and makes the nucleus through which the electron can function, the atom can function. Now, that is in your own nature, your own consciousness. Your own consciousness works in the same way. It works as the positive electron, the yang. And it works so that it expands itself in the yin through energy. And that explodes and becomes communication. So we are working always on these three principles. So we go back again, we go to sattvic, and we go into rajasic, and we go into tamas. You're having these three things. Then in your cells, you have in every cell, it has been scientifically proved, and I saw this over 30 years ago before science discovered it, and it came out in one of the medical discoveries, of that the cell contains 3 points in the cell, and each one of them relates to a different forming and shaping of the body and the health and the various aspects of consciousness. And I had seen these 3 points of the cell, and the lowest point in the cell relates to tamas, which is what you relate from your primitive, what you inherit from your primitive nature of ancestral primitive, primal. And the second point is your ego, which is rajasic. Lowest tamasic cell, and middle cell is rajasic, which is wanting to do everything on his own terms. But there is a highest rajasic, and we have to work to spiritualize the rajasic, and we can do it through breath, through visualization, meditation, attendance of worship, and all these various things. And the last, of course, is the sattvic, which is your own spiritual overdwelling these 2 aspects of the cell. And remember now, you have billions and billions of cells in your bloodstream, but remember, what is blood? Blood is cosmos stuff out there. But inside of you, it is blood. And out there, when we say Jesus is living in the blood, he is living in the cosmos stuff. And when we are taking the sacrament, we are taking his blood in us. As we take the sacrament, hold our breath, and we incorporate the atom of Jesus. We had a very fine paper sent into us just recently by one of the members up north regarding the sacrament and the atom of Jesus. And we're going to publish this in Agape. It's really a wonderful one. It is, is he here tonight? Oh, well, I won't mention names.
No, I have the paper.
Yes, oh, you have the paper. I won't mention names. You can all find it when it comes. But beloved ones, that's all I want to talk about now, because, you know, I'm having to rest my voice somewhat, and I want to tell you how I thank you. I really so thank you all for what you are doing for yourselves and for the work. And seeing the progress and seeing all Niscience is doing, and the love natures, and your wonderful selfless serving with each other and for each other, this is most inspiring. It's beyond description in words. It can only be seen when you're in the Niscience body. There are 2 things that you cannot learn of Niscience. And these are, unless you are with us here and come and a part of the body of Niscience. And these things are related to what the system is. You have to really work with it and live with it to know what it is. And then you finally, the other thing is what we really are, and why we really are, and why we all look upon Niscience as the life, because it is our way of life. Now, I'm seeing more and more now, beloved ones, that our healing powers must come forth in relationship to knowledge of the family atom and the householder life. I'm seeing that the Western disciple, we are not born avatars, beloved ones. We are not avatars. We're not great gurus and we're not great masters. But we are initiates who are being initiated into the spiritual life. And the Western world will not produce gurus in the sense the East have produced them. We are producing cosmos and cosmic disciples and telepathic disciples. But more than that, the householder life is a way for the Western student. And the initiate becomes eventually a guru or a teacher, but he does so by living the householder life. So we have to realize that the householder life for the Western person is definitely first. And how many Westerners can you touch who have built an altar in their home? How many Westerners can you touch who have sacred marriage relationships? How many Westerners can you touch who look upon their children as souls visiting them? How many know about the inner life and know what religion is? We are only now ready. You are the teachers of the coming householders who will eventually become teachers or whatever God wishes them to be in forwarding a great new civilization and human race which is presently being born. Because that is what this forward thrust is in consciousness. A leap in consciousness regarding a review and research of all past religions and their meaning, and a review of our life every moment and second through the power of marking and tracing in our techniques we use, through the use of the various practices we have. Beloved ones, we have not advertised our work because it has been a school which attracts those who are willing to be responsible in making their livelihood. It is a school in which being responsible and going into more or less, not more or less, but going in wholly with dedication into the practices, and all of these things now are coming. And I thank you, beloved ones, as you light the candles on your altar and as you take the continuum sacrament, and as you go each day centered, beautiful and wonderful, unusual things will happen to persons who have no knowledge around you, because you are carrying the presence with you. And to learn what omnipresence means the presence of God in every person who lives the spiritual life. Omnipresence is present in a fellow disciple when he is living the spiritual life. Omnipresence is present and is feeding you the spiritual truths or giving to you that knowledge which you are craving. Just think how many thousands of years there has been a wall of darkness between our souls and God by suppression of spiritual understanding of spiritual gifts, by repression of one direct realization of God through one's own nature. Any teaching that is worth anything with any principle or ethic must lead you to God and let you have spiritual experience. And the student who sits at the knee of instruction sits there that he might learn the pathway of ethic whereby he will use his gifts. That's why he sits there. That's why he is there. But by that bond or that linkage which is connected with souls who have been together in past lives, we all come. We meet each other. We know each other. We have the sacred intimacy of being one with each other. And that is the virtue of the group body. You remember St. Paul said, I had stripes many. I was buffeted. I was tossed here and there. For every perfected group body, one person at least has had to be buffeted. You can look upon me and see buffeting. The years I have worked to come to this hour when I can see, ears to hear, and eyes to see, and can see those who have the intelligible, that they may put upon the records of the future that which is happening to all of you as souls. It has taken me over 60 years, but it has been a great one. But because I neglected the part I'm doing in the last life, it has been paid with compound interest. And it has been good. Good, verily. My experience in Washington brought me great sorrow for the world. It is inconceivable for me to see how people can be cruel to each other, how they can deliberately set up networks of evil for the feet of others to fall. And even parents set up networks for their children to fall by not disciplining them. It is so terrible to look upon ignorance and see the suffering that is going on in this small existence. I tell you, beloved ones, the bread you share with everyone when you take the sacrament, you are sharing the bread of God through the body of Jesus. You are feeding the world. And somehow, in this next 3 centuries, we will not have these horrible hungers. We will always have those who are less evolved in the grading of evolution or evolvement. But we will have always a timing in a moving archetype and in a great archetypal downpouring when men are less evil and less selfish. And that is what we work for in this present time, for that respite of a 2,000 years between another 10,000 years starts after this moving archetype. Now I want to tell you what I saw in the vision the other day before I close again. I want to tell you that I saw in a vision the other day the moving archetype, how every 10,000 years there, of course, begins a new level of Genesis and a new relating to the different levels of the Genesis. There are 4 aspects. But I saw when the great archetypes downpour from the great unconscious, or the Purusha, I saw how this moving archetype begins to be loose, and how the 2,000 years in between the interim of another moving archetype is very loose, and we move towards that, and we know God then without any difficulty, because a Maya veil is removed from our eyes, and even persons who are agnostic believe in God and worship Him and know Him. So that is, in every 12,000 years, there's an ultimate. So we are in that now, that the loosening of the moving archetype is loosening the social mores. It is loosening the marriage condition. It is loosening educational domination of certain kinds of repetition in teaching, which have been harmful to the ingenious side of our minds. It is losing something to do by exposures to politics. It is losing educational in religion exposure of weakness in the pulpits. All of this is coming now to a loosening, so that this last ending of this moving archetype will take its rise and then be God aware. And we get this respite. It's just like we have the daytime, and we have waking consciousness and objective mind, and the moving archetypes, we have 2,000 years in which we have a totally spiritual restoring for humanity in the whole. And that is an opportunity for people to come into the next moving archetype with a higher aspect of intelligence and understanding of God. So think on the things I've said to you tonight. And also I want you to know, and I don't want you to be self-conscious, But Jonathan and myself listen to all these tapes, and we do this during lunchtime. And we have a most wonderful time. We're saying, well, isn't that wonderful? And isn't that great? So don't think we're not here. We're here. And it's really marvelous to hear you and to hear what you're bringing forth. It's beautiful. And to see you, the people in this room, some of them when they first came, they wouldn't have gotten up and spoken before anyone for anything. And now, look at us in Plaisance and in different aspects of being totally uninhibited in the true things, not afraid to be the true thing you are. I know one special woman I love very much. She has had the courage of a tiger and a lioness, and she has stood by her beliefs through everything, and she is getting this reward now. And I'm so grateful for this because it means that she has stood, and in her next life, there'll be no difficulty at all. So this is the most wonderful thing to know that there's someone with the courage to go on believing and knowing what they are doing and knowing of God is right. And that to me is the true path. You have entered the true path, and thereafter you are walking in the angel music, and you are hearing the sound of God. Beloved ones, may God be with you. Let us have a small mantramic moment. We are going to speak a mantra, the mantra that was given to me several years ago, which means instantaneous healing in the twinkling of an eye. And you breathe up and say Maha in your consciousness. Breathe out and say Matra. Maha, Matra. Maha, Matra. Maha, Matra. Maha, Matra. This is your mantra till I meet you at Wessock, and if you cannot come at Wessock, you will be with us and we will be with you. But we are hoping that you can make this trip to Wessock, which will be on May 17th and 18th. 17th and 18th. We're going to be in Monterey at Four Winds, and we're going to have the Buddha Festival with the Eightfold Path of Buddha illustrated in Plaisance, but where the theme will be Buddha and the life of the preacher, as Buddha taught it. But we will have, of course, little Darshan periods, and we'll have the Apostle by the Sea work, and all of these things will happen in this period of Wessock. So I hope that you all can come, and it will be the last pilgrimage until July in Denver. And then, of course, you know the next pilgrimage will be to Carmel and Monterey in September 21. But we will occupy our house on November 1st of this year and be with you then in regular classes, and especially symposiums on dreams and various aspects of things we want to bring together to get us forward in the use of ourselves as technicians of the light and scientists. God bless you again, and I'm leaving you, beloved ones, with tears of gratitude. I never thought that I could leave the grounds like this and leave all of you. But God gave me the strength to do it, and through it I have gained strength, as you all see, because I've been breathing the very fresh sea air which has the proper ions for me. I need those ions now in recovering my heart. I have learned many things about the heart, which I want to pass on to others by my constant marking and tracing of every pain. Every moment I have a pain, I mark and trace it. I'm seeing from where it's come and what it's saying, and why it's saying it. In that way, I have begun to master pain. So, beloved ones, I love you. You are my soul children, my God children, verily. Whatever your journeys are, I will be near you forever. God bless you. Bless you. I love you all. You are so dear and sweet and beautiful and wonderful.